This happened in December of 2022, when I was 19. I had taken up a Christmas temp job while I was back home from uni. When it comes to the UK, we don't really get great picturesque snow at winter, more so grey skies and dark rainy nights. Well, where I'm from anyway. So I had taken up a delivery job for Deliveroo. My friend recommended me the job as he was doing the same thing at the time. It was a great way to make some extra cash while I was back home and bored in the holidays, knowing I would need the money when I was back at uni. It was a great setup for me. I could work when I wanted and could accept jobs I wanted through my profile, set up all through an app. Most of the time I decided to work late evenings as I was a night owl, as it was. And to be fair, that's when a load of jobs would pop up. One night I was bored, not having much to do. My friend who told me about the job was out delivering, so I decided to log in and accept some jobs myself. The weather that night was not the best, with it raining heavily, but typically you would find yourself making more money on those nights, as nobody wants to leave the house in that weather when they can get things delivered. So having that in mind, I hit the road and kept an eye on available jobs. The first few jobs that came in were pretty local, so with the weather conditions, at least I wasn't traveling too far on my moped. I didn't really have a time frame in mind, but after a few hours I was getting bored, and thought about calling it a night. But before I did, one more order came up that I decided to accept. So I picked up the food and headed for the address displayed. Just for some context, I'm from further up north in the UK and don't live in a city. I live in a town surrounded by countryside, so often when traveling, you drive down lots of country lanes. And this ended up being one of those jobs. As I drove to the location, I came out of the main town and ended up driving down some country lanes. Typical, I thought, with it being the last job that I decided to take when all others were around town. As I drove down the dark lanes, I battled to see through the rain, but as I followed the navigation to the address, I could finally see I was getting closer to it. As I approached, it told me to take a hard left straight ahead. So as I slowly approached, I saw that when I got to the turning, there was a gate blocking the way. Stopping and pulling up to the gate, I got off my moped to take a better look. As I looked beyond the gate, I could see that it was another lane that clearly led to a property, where the sat-nav was directing me. I looked to see if I could open the gate, but it had a padlock on it, so there was no chance of opening it, or getting my moped around it. Annoyed and just wanting to get the delivery done, I pulled up my moped and grabbed the food from the back, deciding to hop the gate and walk down the lane as I could see that it was only a few minutes up ahead. I know that decision sounds stupid, but at the time I didn't want a bad review as I wanted to keep the job. As I walked down the lane following my phone, I slowly began to reach where the destination for the drop-off was. But the closer I got, I couldn't see any house. I continued to walk ahead as I approached the destination. As I did, I could only see a trailer straight ahead that looked to be unoccupied. The lights were off and it looked like no one was there. To be honest, it looked abandoned. But this was where the destination for the delivery led me, and there was nothing else or no other home around. I didn't really know what to do. I remember thinking this trailer home was either it or it must have been wrong somehow. Just wanting to be done with the job, I decided to approach the trailer, as much as I didn't want to, and found it strange. I was only thinking of getting the job done and getting out of there. What I should have been thinking, though, was to be more cautious. As I reached the door, I knocked, but as my knuckles hit the door, it caused the door to slowly push open. I stepped back thinking, what the hell, as it opened up to darkness. It was then. I could hear the sound of music playing from a speaker. I had heard the music before, but I didn't know what it was called. But I knew it was always played around the holidays, and honestly, it was unsettling and creepy. For some stupid reason, I didn't just turn around and leave right then. Instead, not thinking straight, I called out, saying, "Hello?" and that I had a food delivery. In that moment, I heard a creak coming from inside the trailer, but I couldn't see anyone coming to sight. Looking around, I began to feel very on edge, as if someone was watching me. and as I looked over to the tree lining just over from the trailer and where I was, my eyes locked onto a figure standing in the distance. My heart began to race as whoever it was stood there, motionless, watching me. Hearing the creak coming from the trailer again, my eyes darted back to the door, and in that moment I felt fear like I'd never felt before, as the outline of another dark figure stood inside the doorway of the trailer, as a shiny object glistened in its hand. I instantly knew what the person was holding, and fearing for my life I dropped the bag I was carrying and bolted running back down the lane as fast as my legs would take me. Unable to help myself, I looked back to see two figures slowly following me. I couldn't get to the gate fast enough, and as I reached it I threw myself over it, scrambling for my keys, as I jumped on my moped, hightailing it out of there. I'd never driven so fast. Even in those poor weather conditions, I didn't stop until I got back into the familiar surroundings of town. I called my friend, telling him what had just happened to me on the job. He didn't believe what I was telling him, which really annoyed me. I ended up calling the police and reporting what had happened, as they told me they would send someone out to investigate. I reported the job to the company as well to see if they could track who placed the order. The police did investigate, and what they found was the trailer, just like I'd thought it looked, abandoned. After the police hit a dead end, and the company finding fake details of a name that the order was placed under, no one was ever apprehended. What happened may have been a fucked up prank, or it could have been something more sinister. I don't know, and I don't want to know. After that night I never took another delivery job again, and that will always be one Christmas that stays with me.
Christmas had always been one of my favorite times of the year. I've always been a festive person and enjoyed the holidays, but Christmas 2015 changed that for me and is something I still think about to this day. At the time, I was with my partner and we had decided to go away for Christmas, just the two of us, and spend the holidays together. We usually spend it with family, but decided to see family before and after and try something different that year. So as the week neared Christmas, we had rented a remote cabin out in Wyoming. We set out early that day to make good time, and so we could arrive as evening began, and to be fair, we made good time and arrived on schedule. So when we reached our location, we made our way to the offices to meet up with the owner, who would take us through the necessary information, check us in, and hand us the keys to our weekend getaway. After meeting with the owner and getting our directions, we made our way to our cabin, just as night was falling, and when we arrived, it did not disappoint. It was what we had hoped, and what you could picture seeing on a Christmas postcard. The beautiful lights glimmering in a snow-covered winter wonderland. We wasted no time getting settled in, unpacking and having a few drinks. As the night went on, we were pretty beat from all the traveling, and had settled for an early night, as again, we were planning an early start to go and venture into the town. My girlfriend headed to bed before myself, as I stayed up having one more drink and taking in the amazing scenery. After that, I called it a night myself. The next day, we woke up and began to get ready. As I was finishing up and headed downstairs, I saw my girlfriend staring out the window. She looked at me smiling as she called me cute. Looking at her confused as to why I was cute, I asked what she meant. She said, "The snowman you built outside, that's cute." I smiled back at her, unsure of what she meant, as I told her I never built a snowman. But as I joined her looking out the window, there was indeed a snowman built right out front of our cabin. Surprised to see it, she asked me if I didn't build it, then who did? I told her that it must have been someone else staying at a nearby cabin or something. Looking at the snowman, it was strange. It had a sad face carved into it and some stick-like horns in its head. But a strange surprise to wake up to. I thought nothing else of it. After inspecting our new guest, we made our way into town and enjoyed our day full of festive activities. After enjoying the day with the sun setting, we arrived back at our cabin with a fresh supply of food and drinks As we climbed the steps, we looked over. Our mysterious snowman was still standing tall. Settling in, we put on a film and opened a bottle of wine as we relaxed and watched a few movies back to back. Nearing midnight and still halfway through our second movie, my girlfriend headed to the kitchen to top off our drinks as I was engrossed in the movie. It was then she grabbed my attention. She called me with a panicked tone in her voice. I asked what was wrong as I turned to see a surprised look on her face. She told me that there were now 2 snowmen built outside her cabin. Surprised at what she was telling me, I made my way over to the window to look, and just like she said, there were now 2 snowmen built outside. Someone had built another snowman in front of our cabin whilst we were inside. I put my coat on, telling her I was going to check it out. She didn't really want me to, as she found it strange that this was happening late at night, and the fact we didn't know who was doing it. I got what she was saying, but I thought it must have been someone else staying local, maybe playing a prank. I stepped out into the bitter cold night as the warmth of the cabin deserted me. It was silent out there, and when I stepped down from the stairs and observed the new snowman to get a better look, it was then I got an uncomfortable feeling. The face on it was creepy. There was an upside-down smile carved into it, but the eyes were 2 X's, which is used as a symbol for fright or death. This filled me with an anxious feeling. I looked around to see if I could see anything else as my girlfriend called out to me from the cabin in a hushed tone to come back in. I told her I would be in a minute, and I was just taking a look around. But as I wandered past the snowman, I stopped mid-sentence as the distance just barely lit up by the moonlight. I could see a dark figure standing, still seemingly looking back our way. I froze as I stared, trying to make out who it was, but I couldn't see. Only the outline of them standing there. Actually, seeing someone out there at near midnight, I didn't know how to react, but the tense feeling that washed over me wouldn't shift. I called out, not quite knowing what else to do. I said, "Hello? Are you okay? Can we help you with something?" Trying to keep the tone of my voice steady. There was no reply. The person just continued to stand there motionless, staring down at us. At that point, the panicked voice of my girlfriend from behind me asked who I was talking to, who was there. As I turned to look at her standing on the deck, I told her someone was standing there. As I looked back, my heart began to race, as the person had now began to move towards me at a fast pace. As they got closer, their face was covered. The whole situation felt wrong, so I quickly backed up and ran towards the cabin, my girlfriend screaming as she saw the stranger walking towards us. I slammed the door shut, locking it. We slowly heard the footsteps ascending the staircase out front when they stopped right outside the door, followed by a slow set of knocks, where each knock sent a shiver down our spines. I asked again who it was out there and what they wanted. My questions were again met with no answer, letting me know that whoever it was, there was something wrong with them, as surely any normal person would respond. My girlfriend crying, I asked her to call the owner we were renting from to notify him that someone outside our cabin is messing with us. Maybe someone from another cabin. When they answered, she passed the phone over to me. Not taking my eyes off the door or window, I told the owner of the situation and that someone was at our cabin, asking if anyone was staying nearby. What he told me made me physically sick. "Sir, the nearest cabin is a good mile away, and no one else is staying out there right now." Hearing that we were supposed to be the only ones out there at the time sent the haunting questions through my mind. Who the fuck was this stranger out here at the dead of night? The owner told us to keep all the doors locked and sit tight. He would ring the police and make his way out there as he wasn't far away. That was little comfort. I stood there trying to calm my girlfriend down as we made sure the doors were securely locked. Trying to see out front, I couldn't see the person out front anymore. As I looked out the window trying to glance the front deck, a loud thud hit the window, causing me to stagger back as my girlfriend screamed. A snowball had been thrown at the window. I couldn't see where it came from, but it meant that person was still out there. For what felt like an age, we waited in that cabin until there was another knock on the door, followed by the voice of an officer. Confirming it was indeed police, we finally opened up. They didn't see anyone in the area, and after searching, no one was found. The snowmen were built by someone out there, and the creepy thing is, they were built one night after the other, so whoever did it knew we were out there. And the scary thought is they were either watching us or came back to play their sick prank on us. Either way, that is one Christmas I will never forget. After that, we didn't stay at the cabin any longer, and the owner was kind enough to give us a partial refund. We now just spend the holidays as it should be, local and with family. I don't know who that was out there that night, and what their real intentions were, and that's the scary thing.
When it comes to the holidays, I always travel back home to my parents for a family get-together. It's always been a family tradition. But Christmas 2019 is one Christmas that will always stay with me for all the wrong reasons. Having planned to head back to my parents for a few days early before Christmas, I'd been talking to my brother, discussing dates and times so we could all get there at similar times and spend more time together, as we all lived out of state. So having packed my belongings and all the gifts for the family, I set out on my journey, planning to arrive later that evening. I was driving, so I set out early in the afternoon as it was going to take me at least 6 hours to get there. About 3/4 of the way through my journey, I had hit some bad weather that I had hoped to avoid, but typically, that didn't happen. It was already dark by now, so the driving conditions were not helped by the heavy snow that had begun to fall. Luckily, the road was quiet, as I was struggling to see ahead with how heavy it was coming down. I didn't want to risk driving too fast, so I took it easy, making sure I was in control of the wheel. As I continued my now longer than anticipated journey, I thought to myself the best idea may be to stop off on the way and get my head down for the night until the snow had eased off. As I was thinking and deciding what to do, it was then, in the distance, I could see up ahead a set of lights flashing on the side of the road. Slowing as I approached, I could just about make out a person waving me down. I came to a stop not too far behind the car as the person approached me at my driver's side. As they approached, I could just about make out under his hat and hood that it was an older male. As he tapped on my window, slowly winding it down, I asked if everything was okay. The man, seemingly happy I'd stopped, told me how he'd been trying to flag someone down for ages, as he needed help, that his car needed a jump. He couldn't get the thing to start back up, and that it was always having trouble in the cold weather.
Could you please help me out, so I don't freeze out here waiting for a tow?
He asked me as he slightly chuckled. Looking back over at his car, and the weather outside, I felt for the man, really. But I didn't really know what to do. I had no jump cables. As I told him this, he told me he already had some in his trunk. He always kept some for emergencies. All he needed was the jump start from me. Seeing how cold this guy was and feeling for him in the situation he was in, I thought I couldn't just let him stay out there. It would only take a few minutes. So I told him yes, I could help him. The guy's face lit up as he thanked me. As he directed me, I slowly lined up next to his car as he went around to pop the hood. Getting out of my car, I did the same. I noticed as I looked over at the guy, he was looking over to the ditch at the side of the road leading to the tree lining, as if looking for something. As he turned and noticed me looking, he quickly attached his jumper cables to his battery, before giving me a smile and walking over to my car, with the other end as he attached them to my battery. Then asking me if I was okay to turn the ignition and see if it did the trick. I agreed, and went around to my driver's side whilst he headed to his car. As I reached in to grab my keys, I turned, calling him to see if he was ready, and it was in that moment the sound of footsteps crunching in the snow echoed in the distance behind his car. I couldn't see the man, and as my eyes locked on to where the sound of footsteps were coming from, a sense of dread washed over me as I saw what emerged in the snowy distance. The sight of two figures wearing balaclavas and Santa hats came running up from the ditch next to the man's car. Not only were they heading towards me, but they were armed with machetes. I didn't have time to process what was happening as my instinct kicked in. Fueled with adrenaline, I jumped into my car, starting the ignition, locking my doors, as I carefully, as quickly as I could, tried to drive off. Suddenly noticing my car bonnet was still up, and the jumpers still attached. I didn't have time to get out and put it down. My plan was just to drive forward enough distance away so I could buy myself time to get out. With the conditions of the road, I was lucky, but I managed to pull off. As I did, the figures were already at my car as they swung their machetes at the windscreen. My heart racing, I passed them, unable to see out of the window. I could hear the cables detach, but as I heard that, my car pulled to the one side as my tire light came on. One of my tires had been slashed. Looking out the back, I could see all three of the figures now heading towards my car. I had no other option but to jump out and run. Opening the door, I threw myself down the slope leading towards the tree lining as I ran into the woods, hearing the men shouting behind me as their footsteps followed. I didn't stop as I fought my way through the snow, trying to run as fast as I could. Looking back, I noticed the men were no longer following me. I was too afraid to stop, so I headed further inside as I hid myself from sight. I felt physically sick, cautiously looking around, fearing that I would see one of them approach me. But after what seemed an age, I heard the sound of a car drive past in the distance. Knowing I couldn't stay out there in those conditions all night, and when I finally felt it was safe to do so, I headed back slowly towards the road, my eyes searching everywhere for the men. As I arrived back at the road, all I could see was my car. There was no one in sight, and the other vehicle was gone. Coming out of the woods, scared and defeated, I reached my car to see. It had been ransacked. Everything stolen, all the presents from the back seat and the trunk all taken. My belongings gone. My windows smashed, my back two tires slashed. I couldn't believe it. As I stood there freezing in the snow, realizing I'd fallen right into a trap. I called the police, reporting what had happened, along with calling my brother to notify him of what had happened, and for him to come and pick me up. As I sat in my car, contemplating what had happened, I felt as low as I had ever felt. After that night, I tried to enjoy Christmas with my family, but I just couldn't. That whole experience had ruined it. But I was thankful I got out of it unharmed, as it could have been a whole lot worse. The police were never able to apprehend any suspects from that night, and after hearing it was a common crime tactic, pretending to be broken down, I've never put myself in a position like that since. I was in the festive spirit and wanted to help, but sometimes it doesn't pay to be so trusting and nice. You should always listen to your gut instinct. Hey guys, we hope you enjoyed this festive video and are enjoying the holiday season. You see, terrifying encounters can happen no matter what time of year. Just a big shout out and thank you to Danny Dreadful for helping out on this one. Always great to have them. As always guys, if you like this video, please like and share. It really helps us out. And comment what you would do in these situations. If you're new here, or haven't already, don't forget to subscribe for more horror content. We really appreciate it. Have a great Christmas, guys. And remember, fear lies within.